Hey BookTube, I'm the Book Mage, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be telling you all of the things that I've read in like the past 2 months, 3 months. I haven't posted a wrap up since like October, I think. That's because November I was going to do like kind of like a reading challenge type thing, which went horribly wrong, but I'm not going to say what it is because I am giving it a second chance. So November was a bit of a bust, but I started reading again like kind of around like the end of November, December, and then I've read quite a few books in January, at least compared to how much like I've been reading recently. And also, one last thing before we start, I was really dumb. I was like moving books out of the stack quite a while ago. I think I mentioned it. I was just dumb because some of the books that I meant to talk about in this wrap up I put in boxes, and now they're somewhere in another stack of boxes that is not here, so I can't really like hold some of them up as I talk about them, which is really annoying because like why did I do that? So if you're wondering why some of them are glossy JPEGs, that's why. So the first book I'm going to talk about today is Horrorstör by Grady Hendrix. As you can see, this is one of the ones that I do not have with me, which is infuriating because this book is a really strange sort of, it's mixed media. This one I read way back at the end of November when I was trying to like get out of my reading slump, because I figured I feel like from the couple books I've read, Grady Hendrix is like a safe bet for getting me out of a reading slump. I tend to find his books are very easygoing and engaging, and it worked. I did manage to read this. So this book is, it kind of feels when you have it in your hands, it's like an IKEA catalogue. That's kind of the gimmick. And it does have inside like those sort of IKEA like diagrams and like instruction manual type images like throughout that add like extra little bits of like spice and world building and like some extra like background noise to the world that you're experiencing. So the kind of basic plot is you're following, I don't remember any names by the way, you're following a character who works in this like, it's basically an IKEA, I think it's called Orsk. They end up having to stay in this IKEA overnight along with some other work colleagues, and things start to get weird and strange and a little bit like, is something going on? And then things start to get really weird and really strange, and it's all sort of told through the kind of like irreverent sort of like send up kind of humour that Grady Hendrix tends to do, at least for the novels that I have read. I don't know if all of his books are like that, but I'm assuming so. He plays on the tropes in a way that you know that it's kind of like meant to be a little bit cheesy and ham-fisted at times, but it's on purpose, and I like them, I appreciate them. They just feel like kind of cheesy horror movies, and I feel like that's what they're going for, and they do it well, and I enjoy them. I will say this, of all the Grady Hendrix I've read 2 so far. I read My Best Friend's Exorcism, which is my favourite of his works so far, and I also read We Sold Our Souls, which I love alternative music and like 90s and grunge music and that sort of scene, so that book was like perfect for me, I think. This one, while I found it entertaining, I just didn't like it as much as the others. I don't know if that's just because like haunted IKEA is not like the setting of my dreams. I enjoyed the book for what it was. I think I gave it like a 3 stars, just like a straight 3 stars, because it was fine. I don't know if I would read it again. If a sequel came out, I would definitely read a sequel. I like Grady Hendrix's writing and I like the humour, and there were a few scenes in this where I was like, I enjoyed the horror aspect of it. If you're looking for like a quick spooky kind of read, I know we're past the spooky season, but it's a little bit comical as well. You know, it's haunted IKEA, and especially if you like sort of, I guess, kind of mixed media in books. For the most part it is text, but there are like little other supplementary parts in there that sort of enhance like the physical text. I have no idea what the ebook looks like, but the physical book does feel like you're reading an IKEA catalogue. So the second book I picked up was The Justice of Kings by Richard Swan. I actually picked this up for a vlog that again also went horribly wrong. I guess I'm still filming that. Who knows when that'll come out. But this is the first in a new fantasy series. I'm assuming it's going to be a trilogy. I think book 2 comes out like in a month or something. It comes out like around the start of the year, I'm pretty sure. So this is an adult high fantasy novel, and it's kind of set following a justice, which is basically like a travelling law enforcement type position, and these justices possess magical powers. So some might be able to speak to animals or potentially read people's minds, raise the dead, compel people to tell the truth, that sort of thing. Things that might assist them in enforcing the rule and the law and the religion of the emperor in this like medieval Europe sort of fantasy inspired land. So The Justice is the main character, but it's told from the perspective of his assistant, who is also training to become a Justice. And because this is the first book in a series, there's a lot of setup going on in the background. I feel like it's easiest to say that the main plot you're following the characters on is, in terms of this series, the B plot, even though it feels like the A plot in this book. The actual real story is going on in the background, sort of behind the scenes. You can kind of see that things are going to branch out. So we start off very small scale with the characters going to a town, and in this town the wife of like a wealthy noble has been murdered. There's been a body found, and they take it upon themselves to investigate and figure out what happened to her, who killed her and why, and this kind of spirals and leads them into this investigation. It's basically like a medieval-y fantasy kind of murder mystery investigation. There is a lot of like law and like judicial process in this. I'm pretty sure the author is a lawyer or something like that. But I liked it. It wasn't overbearing. It wasn't like too heavy or like weighed down by that. The parts of this book that I really enjoyed actually were sort of this magic system that you don't get to see a lot about. I just had really great feelings. There's a lot as well in here to do with like religion, the fact that a lot of these lands that they're traveling through have been within the past few generations sort of overtaken and like subsumed into this empire, and obviously that is therefore rife for issues and like cultural and religious clashes. And I like the sort of dribs and drabs we've had of the religion from this. I do like fantasy religions. They're just one of like my favourite things to read about in books, as well as magic systems. So while we didn't get to see a whole lot of it, I have a feeling that we're going to see a lot more of the religion and the magic system going forward, and like less like small town murder mystery. So I think I gave this like a 4, maybe like a 4.25. I ended up really enjoying this. I did think it was very slow at certain points. There was some scenes in the beginning that I really enjoyed. When things finally picked up towards like the end of the book, maybe like the last like 100 pages ish, it definitely picked up. The middle bit I did think was a bit of a slog. There was like a lot of repetition during like the investigation, but I feel like it was just kind of world building and like exploring the characters a little bit, so I feel like it was justified. And it is not a terribly long book. I think it's only like 400 something pages, and I did go ahead and pre-order book 2 because this is definitely a series that I intend to continue with. So yeah, I'm glad to have gotten this in one of my subscription boxes. I don't know if I would have picked it up. I really like the cover, so maybe I would have been drawn to it, but I feel like if this book had sold itself more on like the tiny background, like dark magic and theology and whatnot, I would have been way more down to read it. So if you're like me and you're happy to wait until like book 2 for what I assume we'll get more of that, then I would definitely recommend it. Although, do a fun game, take a shot every time the author says alacrity. Within like the first couple 100 pages, you might be drunk. Sad news as well, like I don't have anywhere to put them. Like my books are stacked so far forward now that I don't think I can display these anywhere. Okay, so the next book I picked up in December was The Stolen Throne by David Gader. So this is the first book in the Dragon Age series of novels, and I feel like I've talked about this book and this series so much in recent videos. So I feel like I might be rehashing a bit here, but basically one of my personal goals for this year is to specifically read this series and catch up on this series because the next video game installment is going to be coming out. Yeah, this is a reread for me. When I first read this, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars and I loved it, and I couldn't decide whether this book or another book was like my favourite book of all time. When I reread this, I think it's probably only worth about like a 4 stars. I feel like I've read a lot better in terms of like the writing and the craftsmanship, but I feel like it is weighed down by the fact that it is a prequel to a video game. It's a tie-in novel, and it's not really allowed to like be its own thing or like stand on its own feet. It has to get through like a lot of history and like a lot of places and a lot of events to sort of flesh them out in a way that feels meaningful, but also you've got like a limited amount of time to do it, and you have to do it all in a way that sets it up for the games, for the people that want to like go back and read the lore. It was more about ticking off those boxes than it was about just letting it breathe and letting the story like be its own thing. I do think David Gader is a good writer, and I really enjoy his characters. I really like the banter, and I have such a personal theory about this and how one throwaway line in this book results in all the crap that happens in Dragon Age Origins. I swear, like I know it's more than that, I know there's more build up than that, I know there's lots of little pieces coming together, but I swear one line in this changes your entire perspective of like the whole situation at Ostagar. For the 2 people that watch my channel that may have played this game, everyone else is probably sat here like just skipping through the video, so I won't talk about this too much. Basically, I really enjoyed it on a reread. I feel like if you've played the games, if you like Dragon Age, especially Origins, I would give this series a go. I do think that if you know the world and the characters and the lore, they are good reads, which does mean that I enjoyed it, hence the 4 stars, but that's about the best I can say. So immediately after reading The Stolen Throne, I moved on and picked up book 2, which is The Calling. So I have a history with this book. I started reading this like 10 years ago. You can actually see the ancient dog ear from like 10 years ago. I'm pretty sure it's the same issue with a couple of the books I was like reading around the same time. I was reading this and I think I was doing some sort of like school exam or something, or it might have been like the holidays, I don't know. I'm pretty sure I put this down because I was busy with like schoolwork or something like that, and I just never got round to picking it back up. I got like 140 something pages in. Yeah, what can I say? It was honestly just time to finish this. Like, what is the longest time you've ever left it between putting a book down and then picking it up again? I don't know if this is the longest. Actually, it's not. I know for a fact this is not the longest. That's a long time to have a book on pause. So I did start rereading it from the beginning, and I did enjoy this one. Like, there wasn't any reason I put it down before. It's a pretty direct continuation to The Stolen Throne, and this one has the Grey Wardens in it, which I love. Victory, vigilance, sacrifice. I'm so here for it. I wish we would have got more of a look at... I feel like the Wardens in this, I like the sort of cult-like mysticism and fervour about their order that you tend to see more in the games. I like how dark and morally grey it can get, and like I really like that. I also just really like the Wardens. I like any sort of like solemn duty kind of trope, and I thought that compared to the first book, because this story takes place over like a week or 2, whereas this one is like several years, the characters get to be fleshed out a bit more, they can breathe a bit more, there's more time for like development and conversations. Just specifically for anybody who's played the games, I'm not going to consider this a spoiler really, but anyone who's played the games, usually people have like a least favourite part, and most people hate either the Fade or the Deep Roads. You get both. Yeah, the characters in this are not having a great time, but that's what I expect and that's what I appreciate. I like the angst, I like the drama. I rated this one about a 4 stars as well. I feel like it was better written than the first one, but I feel like I'm more nostalgically attached to the first one, so I think I personally like the first one better, even though I think this is the better written book. Okay, now it is time for some of the books that I read during my... I attempted to do like a 24-hour readathon in January, like before I went back to work. Could not have gone more wrong. I got like weirdly ill like twice during that vlog. But the next couple books were, I read a few like novellas and like short stories. The next book I read was The Tale of the Tailor and the Three Dead Kings by Dan Jones. This one I got on a complete whim, just because it was like a short, wintry feeling sort of like retelling of like a medieval ghost story, and I was like, put it in my bag, put it in my bag. My excuse is Waterstones were having a sale and it's like 100 and something pages, but I wanted it. So I'd hoped it would arrive in time for like Christmas, so I could have like a bit of like a spooky Christmas time kind of read. It didn't, but January's close enough. This also includes the full... There's a transliteration of the original text in Latin, but also it has some like scans of the original like handwritten manuscript as well, which honestly I love this book just for that. It's set in Yorkshire as well, I'm pretty sure, so the characters have like an accent kind of similar to mine. I would say that especially for like being on camera, I tend to enunciate way better than I do in real life. Like if you hear me pronouncing a T, I am not saying that T in real life. So I really appreciated like the spelling out of the accent. I could hear it perfectly, and some of the places mentioned were recognisable to me, so I really liked that. This is a short story, and because it's kind of like, it's not like a word for word retelling of the original, but it sticks quite closely to the source material and just sort of like pads it out a little bit, I guess. It's fine. It's not spooky or scary. I feel like if you were born hundreds of years ago and the scariest thing you can imagine is like maybe not being in God's good graces, that's it. That's the horror element, and it's not really a spoiler because it's pretty upfront about that, and it tells you you're going to meet like these sort of multiple dead ghosts, and the ones that sounded kind of like the creepiest to me we didn't meet. Another ghost mentioned they existed and you like never got to see them, really. It wasn't quite as like dark or as creeping or like as insidious as I assumed it might feel. I had this image of like if you're riding like your horse or your cart down like a sort of dead wintry road through the trees, like along like fields and farms and things on your own. I'm like, that is so, especially through like the Yorkshire wilderness, that's like rife for like atmosphere, and I just didn't feel it was very atmospheric. Some of like the ways the ghosts and things or like the spirits or demons or whatever they were described. I know it's because this is like the scariest thing a medieval person could imagine when they first like put it to pen, but like my dudes, it's fascinating, it's an interesting read, but it's not scary. I appreciate the effort for trying though, and I do like that I've got to read like this little medieval ghost tale, you know. I don't feel like it would be, it's not exactly like Mandorcar hand hook door thing. I don't know if I said that right, but if you know what I mean, you know what I mean. I mainly enjoyed, I guess, like the setting. It was fine. I think I gave it like a 2.5 stars. It was enjoyable, but that was it. The next one I picked up, which honestly kind of just glad to have it off my TBR to be honest, was Voices by, I think it's David Elliott. This is a poetic retelling of like the story of Joan of Arc from like the perspective of people who knew her and like objects that have like some sort of symbolic relation to her, like her sword, her armor. I'm pretty sure there's like some more mundane ones in there as well, like a shirt or a dress or something. I thought this book was fine. The main reason I picked this up was because it's really short, it's poetry, I like poetry, and my nerd is showing again, but like some of the religion in Dragon Age, their like key like religious figure for most of the world is basically if Joan of Arc were treated like Jesus, that's it. So I was like, I kind of feel like I want to read some Joan of Arc because it reminds me a bit of the religion in Dragon Age. Having said that, I wasn't a massive fan of the poetry itself. I feel like it probably did capture the events of Joan of Arc and like the history of it pretty well. There were like some direct quotations in there from the two of the trials that she went through, and I liked the way that those were worked in. I do feel like though one of like the key aspects of the style of poetry that this book was going for was there was a lot of repetition, like the objects, and I guess it's because like an object only has like one function, so like its existence is by definition repetitive, which came through in the text, but in the way that sometimes it was just like an object saying the same line, like the same 2 or 3 lines in a slightly different order with a couple lines in between and then like those same lines again, and I got the feeling a lot of it was just like filling or padding. A lot of these poems are told in like a specific shape, so like the candle is in the shape of like a flame, and like the sword is in the shape of like a sword, and sometimes get the feeling, I feel like the poems were hindered by the fact that the author wanted them to fit into a specific shape. So if there wasn't enough to put in there, I guess they just padded it out by repeating the same lines a few times throughout the poem. It does hinder my enjoyment reading it. I like looking at the picture, but like, have you seen me? I've seen a lot of swords. I feel like I would have liked this better if the poems were good. I would rather you have just like a poem set out on a page, not in a shape, that was a better poem than like sacrificing the art of like the words on the page so that they look a certain way. That was my impression anyway. I gave this one like, I think like a 2 stars. This is the least favourite thing that I read, just because like it's a bit out of like my normal wheelhouse, to be honest. Really, how much enjoyment was I going to get from this? I read this because I like Dragon Age, and like I mean, close enough. I'd rather read The Chant of Light, to be honest. Canticle of Threnodies 813. My favourite. You know the one if you've played the game. Oh my god, you know the one. I need to move on so much. My entire brain is just Dragon Age right now. Which is like not a bad thing and not unusual for me, but like maybe a hindrance to this video. So after that, and also part of the same vlog, I picked up Artificial Condition by Martha Wells. This is the second book in the Murderbot Diaries series. So this is another novella, and in the first book you're following Murderbot, and Murderbot is a rogue security unit. They're kind of basically like an android, and all it wants to do is kind of sit in its little like robotic pod thing and just watch like telenovela things and like cheesy TV shows. But Murderbot has a job, and that job is to guard scientists on this research planet, and eventually things kind of start to go a bit askew, and Murderbot has to start doing its job properly and not just like watching TV in its own head. And I feel like the best part about these books is Murderbot and their personality. They have such anxiety, and I love it. And the way that they think and word things and interact is just very entertaining in a way that feels very relatable. So this continues Murderbot's story, and I think I mentioned in my vlog that this is like, there's a lot more interaction in this one and less like actual action, but I liked that, and I really liked being back in Murderbot's head. I really like their tone of voice and the way that that like permeates the narrative. I really like the sort of kind of dry, constantly like slightly tense and kind of sarcastic way that they like think about things and talk about things, and the very honest way that they like talk about their feelings, and just how sometimes they're just so incredibly like out of their own depth by like basic interactions, and it's like, bitch, same. Because of that, I ended up giving this 4 stars. I feel like I really enjoyed the exploration and the progression. I wasn't massively interested in like the actual plot and story, but I feel like all of that is kind of like a backseat for the character. Like, I feel like the characters are at the forefront of like what makes these bingeable and enjoyable. So another one that I really enjoyed, and I'm glad that I've picked up, and I will definitely want to continue with this series. Probably a good time to mention that I was doing like a whole series continuation reading vlog, which I will link up here as well. So basically all of the rest of the books as well are all series continuations. And the next one was a big one, because I finally picked up Red Seas Under Red Skies by Scott Lynch. So this is the second book in the Gentleman Bastard sequence. In the first book, The Lies of Lochlamora, which is one of my favourite books of all time, by the way, I gave that 5 stars. I was blown away by how freaking good it is. In that book we are following Lochlamora, who is like the head of a band of like thieves, rogues, con men, and at the start of the novel they're putting together like the final touches on what is going to be like their biggest heist ever. And it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it, and it was always like flicking back and forth between like the present day during this heist and also like Locke's past and like how he came to be like the leader of like this band of merry men basically. And so this is the continuation following on from the way that that book ends, and I really can't say anything because massive spoilers. What I can say is I really enjoyed this one as well. I had really hoped that this would be a 5-star read as well, considering how much I liked the first one, and especially how much of that was due to like, I feel like the craft of the author themselves as opposed to like just like character attachments. So I can say, I'll get out of the way, I did also give this 5 stars as well. Pretty much from the moment I picked this book up, from like the first page, I was thinking, yeah, this is 5-star quality, like this is a well-written book. And I just felt that like the whole way through. I tend to only know like right at the end of a book when it finally hits me, like the culmination of everything, and it finally wraps up, and sometimes like that 5-star feeling will really hit me. But with this, I literally knew it from the first page, so really liked that. And yeah, I started reading this on like right at the end of like the 3rd of January, like into the 4th of January, which is a fantastic time for me to have picked up my first 5-star read of the year, and potentially one of my favourite books of this year, because I don't often give out 5 stars, so this might end up being in a lot of end of year videos. I felt this was less like twisty, turny, like tangled spaghetti junction type plot threads as opposed to like the way that the first one was. This is way more straightforward. I don't think there was any point in this book where I didn't know where we were going. I always kind of could see like the path ahead, but I still did enjoy the plot and the characters, and the writing was fantastic, and I think the world building as well is just one of the best things about these books. It's done so carefully and technically, but like it's very casual at the same time. The world like that this is set in just feels so tangible and realistic, unique, like it feels familiar but also completely alien at the same time, which is just fantastic, honestly. So yeah, I love this. So I'm really glad I picked this up. I don't know when I'm gonna get to the next book. I do have the 3rd book, but I think book 4 is still, I think, on the way out still. It's been like about to come out for a couple of years, and I think there's like a novella on the way as well. So I don't want to be like all caught up and then have like a 10-year wait. It's difficult because like I do really want to continue with this like pretty much immediately, but at the same time I know that if I do, I'm gonna get to the end of like book 4 when it eventually comes out and like maybe read the novella, and then I'll just be like, oh, like now what do I do? On the one hand, yeah, I did wait like 10 years between continuing this series, but like I think I would prefer to reread them, but at the same time like I don't know if I want to reread like all 4 of the books. So I'm not sure when I will get to the next book in this series. I don't want to leave it too long, but I also don't want it to be like too soon. And then the last book that I read in January was also a series continuation, and that was Ravencry by Ed MacDonald. So this is the second book in the Ravensmark trilogy, and it is the sequel to Blackwing, which I read in I think 2019. This is another one where I just can't believe it's taken me this long to pick up the series again, and I am determined to finish this series this year. In the first book you're following a man named Riel Galharrow, and he is a servant of one of these sort of godlike beings called the Nameless, who are kind of on the side of humanity in this horrible war that's been raging for quite a long time, and on the other side are these entities called the Deep Kings. And this world that this takes place in is extremely grim. It is very grimdark. It is the over the top kind of grimdark, where basically the whole world is miserable and everything wants to kill you. Again, massive spoiler territory, so I can't really say anything, but I will say I liked getting back to the characters. I had completely forgotten that this has a big film noir type vibe in the way that it's narrated from the main character's perspective. I do really like the characters in this. It is pretty equally plot and character driven, but I feel like the plot is sometimes so big and overarching that even the characters kind of acknowledge I know that I should be trying to save the world, but that's kind of beyond me, so I'm gonna go and try and help my friends, or try and do little smaller things that make sense to a human perspective, which is honestly kind of nice, and I feel like it's a pretty honest depiction that I don't see often done in fantasy books, because everyone tends to be this big selfless hero, and not in this book. Yeah, so I really enjoyed this one and really liked getting back to the world. It was a fun read. I managed to fly through this pretty quickly. It's very fast paced, it's very engaging, and I'm looking forward to picking up book 3. I think I gave this when it comes to fractions with stars, it's hard to say sometimes. It's definitely a 4 stars, maybe a 4.25 something, and usually my opinion of a book changes over time, so I'm just gonna go ahead and say it's a 4-star read. Really liked it, really enjoyed it. If you like extremely miserable grimdark, then give this series a go. I would highly recommend it. I would say this is probably one of my favourite fantasy series that I'm currently reading. It's way up there, just in terms of how entertaining and how unique it is. It does have sort of a military steampunky kind of vibe. It's not quite gunpowder fantasy, but it kind of is. There's a very unique magic system, and technology kind of runs on that magic system, so there's some technology but there's also no other technology, so it just feels very fresh. I don't think I talk about this series enough, to be honest, and I'm definitely going to finish it this year. Yeah, this made a really good end to my reading month. So yeah, that was basically everything I've read up until now. I will say January was a really good month because not only did I continue a lot of series, all of the series I continued were at least 4 stars, and one of them was a 5-star read. The only iffy kind of reads I've had, honestly, this whole month have been the little novellas and poetry things that I picked up, and just on a whim for a vlog. So I feel if I hadn't done that, basically every book in my wrap-up would be a 4-star book, with the 1 5-star book, which is a fantastic start to my year. I'm not going to jinx it and say that I'm going to carry on exactly like this, but I would hope that I at least get to carry on with books as good as this. I would love it if I had a year of nothing but 4 and 5-star reads. That would be fantastic. I think we all know it's not going to happen, but I can dream. I feel this wrap-up has gone on for kind of a long time, so if you made it this far, leave me a little book stack emoji because I read a whole stack of books. And let me know as well, how many books have you read this year? Do you have a favourite read so far this year? And with that, I think that is everything from me. So thank you guys so much for watching, and hopefully I will see you in the next video. Bye!